Here's a tip for people that are out there. If you're trying to get somebody something for golf stuff and they're like way into golf, like that, where you're trying to show that, like, hey, I appreciate that. I want to get you something you like.
Don't do it.
Hey, everybody, we are back. How you living? No putts given. Tony Covey, Chris Nickel, GolfSpy T, GolfSpy C. See, we do that. It goes back and forth. Tony, it's the end. It's the end of November.
Jesus.
You know what that means?
No.
It means three things. Number one, it's my birthday today.
Happy birthday. Well, is it your birthday today?
No.
Or is it your birthday 2 days ago?
It's my birthday Wednesday.
So today, as people are seeing this, it is your birthday.
Yes. So I expect lots of gifts coming my way.
What you need is some Japanese head covers.
I need. In fact, we're going to talk about that, Tony. We're going to talk about what we would like to get or not get in the holiday season during this time of gift giving and deals and all things materialistic and commercialism. We're going to get there. But before we get to that, we put out a one-word survey because we want to know how people feel about companies and what they associate, how they perceive. We spend all this time. We know it. We do data, performance. We get it. And we wish people would make informed decisions based on empirical evidence, quantitative data. But we also know that how people perceive brands can impact their purchasing decisions from time to time. But also, it's just interesting, right? This is information that's really actually very valuable to companies, right? Because they want to know how they're perceived by outside entities like consumers. So we're going to get into that as well. Why don't we just dive into that one, Tony? Why don't we just start with the one-word survey? Let's start with this part. What surprised you or didn't surprise you? We'll kind of run through the categories.
Let's rewind just a bit for readers who are not familiar with this or have never seen this. It's kind of nicknamed the one-word survey, more officially, I suppose, or the idea behind it is a brand perception survey. And what this came from was after years of my inbox being bombarded with press releases that basically was just the same cycle of buzzwords over and over again. Called it buzzword bingo at the time, right? Like, oh, we are outstanding performance, innovation. I mean, you just run down the list. We are the leaders, the number one whatever widget in golf. Like we've all seen this stuff over and over and over again. And so I started thinking about it in terms of, like, when you think about word association games, right? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? And I thought, well, what's the first golf equipment brand that comes to your mind when you hear any one of these buzzwords, if you will? And then building on that, I'm like, well, if we look at these, what I guess you call positive buzzwords, these words that golf companies want associated with their brand, what does the opposite of those look like? So what if we threw some negatives in there as well? And so that was the idea. If I think it's grown to 10 positive words, if you will, and then what are loosely their opposites on the negative side. And it's interesting to see, how that all shakes out, how well brands do it at sort of getting us to buy into their position, because ultimately, and this is true beyond golf, but brands tell us who they are or who they want us to believe they are. Right. And then through experience and other perceptions, the consumer ultimately decides whether or not a brand is what it says it is. And so, we've kind of done this. This is the fourth time now. And I thought this year would be particularly, there we go.
That's a hard word to say.
Particularly. Got to really work at it. Particularly interesting, kind of coming out of COVID, right? Theoretically, or we're told optimistically, hopefully beyond the worst of it. And so how much have perceptions changed? And by extension, how much has the industry changed over that period of COVID. So yeah, potentially some interesting stuff here, and certainly in the results, kind of some stuff that was like, that's eye opening.
And with 4 years of data, right? We have 4 years of data. So not just how do people perceive it this year, but when I was going through it, it was really interesting to see what, if any, change has there been over time? Have there been any shifts, right? Because we talk about a lot of this stuff, like, when you're right in the middle of a transition, you don't often see it as such, right? And so this gives us an opportunity to look back a little bit and say, okay, is the nature, or are people getting a different sense, who's losing ground, who's gaining ground, and how do people feel about that? And this isn't what Tony's saying, this isn't what Chris is saying, whatever. This is the mass of consumers, and based on the number of responses that we got to this particular survey, this is really, really good data.
Yeah, I mean, we're just under 10,000 responses. 10,000. So yeah, I mean, this is a sizable response pool. This one typically does pretty well in terms of responses, and that's because by design we kept this easy, and we have had people come to us and go, well, I'd like it better if I could rank the companies. Right. It's like, I understand that, but we really want to get to like, what is the impulsive reaction, like which brand. When you hear it, what's the first brand that comes to mind? Not necessarily who you think is number one for, number two for, et cetera, et cetera. And likewise, too, it's the reason why, while we do give a none of the above option, in case you go, hey, I hear engineering, and I go, nothing springs to mind. We don't give you an all of the above, because I don't think it's realistic to go, hey, when I say innovation, I think of every golf company all at once. No, there's usually one that springs to mind, and so that's really the purpose, is to kind of get to that gut reaction. And so there you have it.
Let's dive into it. Let's dive in. Let's kind of go through it. Dive in. Let's go through it first based on just kind of what we saw this year, and then we can talk about changes over time in each of those particular areas. So we'll kind of go by word, and then kind of those two different pieces. So performance. What did we see, Tony, in the performance area?
Yeah, the one, again, having the year over year or survey over survey percent shift in front of me. And one other thing I should say at the onset of this discussion too is the undeniable sort of trends, or I guess even realities, if you will, of the survey, is that when we're looking at the positive words, well, there are some exceptions where brands kind of rise up. It's typically the biggest brands that rate there. That's just an undeniable reaction. And again, right, the biggest brands, you would think those are the ones that come to mind first. And then conversely, when we get to those negative words, it does tend to be the smaller brands that kind of rise up. And so one of the things we consistently look for is, hey, when a smaller brand hits the board for a positive, that's telling. And when a big brand hits the board for not necessarily all the negatives, but for certain negatives, it's also telling as well. So yeah, there we go. As far as performance, like I said, the year over year change. Titleist finished first. Almost 31% of the people who took the survey said Titleist is the brand that springs to mind when they hear performance, and that's a 55% change from the previous version. Yeah, and it was enough to. It's a shift that took Titleist. They were second last year, or last time, behind Ping. And this time around they flip-flopped, but they were only a couple 2-3 percentage points behind Ping last time, and now it's basically it's a double up. So 30%, 31 versus 15.15, 16, 31 to 16.
Yeah, two questions for you there. Any reason why? Can you put, is there any, when we look at attribution of some of these, as I was going through there's some things that jumped out to me, like, okay, this makes sense given A, B, C, and D. But with the performance part, again, companies that I expected to stick out, again, you talk about Titleist, Ping, TaylorMade, so on and so forth, companies that did well, Mizuno, into Callaway. Nothing really surprising. There were people who said those companies perform well, but the shift to Titleist, it's like votes, right? You got to think these kind of they took votes away from some of these other companies and shifted them toward Titleist from a performance standpoint. anything you can put your thumb on there as to why that may have been the case?
I think, a couple things maybe. I think because Titleist has done so well in ball lab testing, I think maybe that influences things. Probably, we talk about that in terms of a quality argument, but I think it probably trickles down to other areas. I think, too, just in terms of brands that are generally regarded well or respected by golfers, I think Titleist. I have a ton of guys who absolutely hate Titleist for one reason or another, and that's
sure
the brand. It's kind of an even keel. Not particularly loud, not overly boastful. So I think, not having the detractors and then having some strong performances in ball lab. And I think, looking at the drivers, I think in terms of anything to do with golf equipment, we've talked about this with Bosch from Mizuno.
Yeah.
The driver sort of just leads the way and everything else rides the coattails. So I think the fact that their drivers have significantly improved to the point now where I would argue they're as good as anybody else's, where at the time I would have told you that, they're just not, they're not what they should be. So I think that probably helps. I think that's probably a good bit of it.
Yeah. And I think too, it is what it is and release cycles are what they are, but given the fact that they have their best foot forward currently with TSR being out in the market with time and for people
timing, sure.
It came out early enough in still in 2022 that people, some people, certainly not the masses, certainly not, hasn't been through most wanted testing, anything like that. For all of those type of things, it's a 2023 product, but a lot of reception on tour. I don't think that product getting into the market at the time that it did hurt the idea of performance, at all. So there you go. Innovation. Well,
hold on. Real two quick bullet points here on performance. I want to mention Mizuno because they finished fourth, and that's a case where we see, like I said, if there's a smaller brand that overperforms, it's noteworthy. And Mizuno has continued to do well in this survey for this word. And then the other one is PXG, which only received 4.29% of the vote, or choice picks, whatever you want to call it. I think good enough for 6th overall. Excuse me,
middle of the pack overall.
But the interesting thing is, it's a 51% increase. And granted, when you're dealing with small numbers, it's a lot easier to gain larger percentages. But it's still interesting to see that kind of jump. So anyway, that's performance.
Absolutely. How about innovation?
Similar pattern to what we saw with performance, in that the leader, in this case TaylorMade, was actually more than double. 33% of respondents chose TaylorMade, and that is almost a 63% increase over the previous survey. So big jump there. TaylorMade. A second, Callaway, Ping, and PXG running, and again PXG running between 12 and 14% are all kind of a very solid 2 to 4, all right there. But yeah, TaylorMade, just for innovation, just blew surprisingly high percentage. Chose TaylorMade.
Surprisingly high. I think that success of at least in some fashion, success of carbon wood.
I think, the perception of that as being new and different and innovative. I think, this is a case where I would point to a singular product as being a good bit of the reason why we see a massive change.
Yeah, because really, when you go through the list of those other ones, right, and even you look year over year, did Callaway do anything remarkably innovative where you point to that? No, not in difference. Callaway really pushes the AI concepts and talks a lot about what they're doing with R&D, things that people might associate as innovative.
Not to say it isn't valid, because I'm sure that it is, but you can't sort of tell the same story 4 years in a row and be innovative that fourth time.
Right. And that's we mentioned that with new products last year. I think when it came out, like, hey, with drivers, things, what are you excited about? It's like, did Callaway go to the well one too many times on some of the naming conventions? And like, hey, we've seen all these technologies before, maybe not all together in a single product, but in terms of being like, hey, that's new, that's different, not much there, but yet, right, responders say, hey, when we think of innovative companies, obviously Callaway's right up there at the very top, or second rather. I guess it's like Championship Flight, TaylorMade won by a convincing margin, and then we got the First Flight with Callaway, Ping, and PXG being in there, and then we kind of have second, third, fourth Flight kind of throughout the rest. So
yeah, and the footnotes here, PXG into the fourth spot for anything is, I don't want to say surprising, but to me, the general trend of PXG throughout is a brand that seems to be gaining more credibility with golfers. Not universally, not for everything, but certainly ticking upwards. And then I will mention Titleist again. Innovation, and I don't find this surprising.
right.
This is not in 4 years now of doing the survey. Titleist has never been in the top 5. Still not in the top 5, but in 2019 they were at less than 2.5%. 2020 they're up around 4.5%, and now this year they're pushing 6.5. So a 42% gain. Again, small numbers, easier to make big percentage gains, but
Right.
Titleist showing momentum for innovation is. I'm sure they like it. It's just not anything I would historically associate with the brand, and I would go so far as to say is historically, my experience anyway, Titleist has always lagged behind and let everybody else sort of dip their toes into the waters of a particular technology, and then hey, 2 years later, we'll try this. I mean, movable weights is a great example, right?
Yeah.
Titleist was really, really slow to do that. So, interesting, not definitive by any means, but a curiosity to see if that continues and, what comes of it.
Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. Engineering.
It's always
I mean,
it's just ping. Like, I don't know.
Do you feel like this is a have you heard of ping category? Like, could we just ask the question like, hey, have you heard of ping?
Yeah, I mean,
yes or no?
They've gone. 4 for 4 in four iterations of this survey. And they've been a high of 29% the first year, a low of 26% last year, and everywhere in the other 2 years in between that, up 6.86% from the previous year. I don't know why, but Ping has, maybe it goes back to Karsten and everything he was about, but this idea, like, Ping is an engineering company. First and foremost, they're an engineering company that makes golf clubs. That is the perception. Obviously, that manifests itself. Like, yes, they do engineering. They make golf clubs. So does everybody else on this list.
I was going to say, does that mean TaylorMade, Callaway, Titleist, they don't have engineers on staff? Like, are these companies? No, not at all. That's not the case at all. But I think part of this too comes from some of the design elements. Like when you look historically at some of the products, not current generation, but several generations ago, it was very clear that Ping chose function over form, right? It was
there's an industrial element about it. There is probably something to the fact that the marketing has historically been less over the top, kind of less screaming in your face about, random new innovations and all this stuff, and more just, hey, this is steady engineering, right? We are nerds that assembled this product based on science, and here you go. It's so no surprise. It would be a surprise if anybody other than Ping was at the top of that list.
Yeah, and yet you see, I mean, like I said, they still gained year over year. Like I said, it's been in that 26, 27, 28, 9% range typically, but year over year they gained, fractionally 6, almost 7%. So
yeah, big movers also. TaylorMade picked up 25%. Titleist, again, they have engineers like everybody else, but there's probably some loose correlation between innovation and engineering. So typically this hasn't been a category where Titleist has been particularly strong either. And, they're up 36% again here as well. Yeah. And I also, this one puzzles me a little bit, but this is one where Cobra was particularly strong in 2020, 8%, which I think was probably, eyeballing it here would have been in the top 5. This survey down to just under 4%, a slide of 50%. So that one is intriguing for less positive reasons, but it's a curiosity. And whether that's a blip or an indicator of a larger trend in perception, I don't know. We'll see, right?
Yeah.
That's why we do this.
Yeah, I can't have a trend on 1 year of data, so we'll see. But certainly something to look at or look for over time. Who are the leaders in the industry? Titleist, TaylorMade, Callaway, Ping, Mizuno. This is one you expect big brands to dominate, right?
Yeah. So Callaway finished number one the first 2 years. Titleist has been number one the last 2 years. Big number this year. 42% of respondents chose Titleist, up 37%. TaylorMade, 21% finished second, up 13%.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of the notable here, Ping at 10% finished fourth, but that was a decline of almost 30%.
Yeah.
And Mizuno fell 25% as well. And then digging deeper, PXG nowhere near the top at only 2.68%, but it is 69% positive change. So again, small numbers. I'm going to keep hammering this home. It's easy to make big percentage gains with small numbers, but it's just this idea of there's something here that suggests that maybe perceptions are changing in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to dig into that one a little bit later when we get to the end on kind of some of our bigger picture final thoughts on around this. But there's a couple things in here specific to the PXG world that, just trying to put together a couple of the pieces and saying, okay, are we seeing something different? And with the leader piece, there's something there around the retail world and just how they do business. And we've talked about this before, but the models and how they've changed things.
Kind of marching to a drum that nobody else hears.
Yeah, or doesn't have or can't afford. So, all right. So those are certain types, right? Now we get to, man, the real guts of like, how do you feel about, like, almost like on a moral, ethical level, getting into some of these ones like integrity. Like integrity.
Yeah, there's no, that one's,
there's no hiding from these. Like,
I can't measure that on a launch monitor. Right? That's like, you've got to make, this is one where golfers have to believe that you are who you say you are. You're not going to lie, mislead, deceive. You're going to stand behind your product, everything that goes into that. So, yeah.
I mean, this hits on, a lot of layers, a lot of levels, integrity, trust. And man, that, like I said, that really gets to kind of the core of how some of these people feel about these companies, and the company with the most integrity, right? According to our respondents.
Titleist again, first on this one, 33%, up almost 20. And, they've been historically second. So this is it's not surprising. They do really well here consistently. This year they passed Ping.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's relatively close. Those are the two that stand out. And then third on the list, kind of, again, surprising only because of the size of the company, not because, I would give you any reason to dispute it at all. But Mizuno, again, strong showing from a smaller brand. Mm-hmm. And then, rounding out the top five, Callaway and TaylorMade, 6% and 4.5%, give or take, respectively.
Yeah. And again, have to know, I mean, again, small numbers make it easy, or, magnitude of change for averages and percentages. But PXG was up over 100%.
Yes.
So,
109% change. And again, I mean, it's, they went to put this, in terms everyone gets, they went from 1.4% to 2.9. So
right.
It's small numbers, but big change from small numbers.
Big change, small numbers. So, integrity makes sense. Quality and trustworthy kind of follows some of these similar patterns.
There's some overlap, and if you look, like there's a little shift in it, but it's, for both, it's Titleist Mizuno Ping and then Titleist Ping Mizuno. So, and it's, pretty similar breakdowns, 35% versus, for quality for Titleist, 32 for trustworthy, 22% for Mizuno. And again, that to me is overperforming. Again, I don't want to call Mizuno a small brand, but it's not a big brand. It's
No,
it's a
it's
little
not
bit
one
of
of
a
the top
tweener.
4, 5. I mean, we talk
6. I
about,
mean, it's
yeah, I mean, you take, just by market share and some of those things, Titleist, Callaway, TaylorMade, Ping, Cobra, and if that dominates 90% of the market, more or less, then we're talking Bridgestone, Cobra, again, kind of in that in between, Strixon, Cleveland, PXG, Mizuno's in that class, right? I mean, they may be toward the top of that class, no doubt, but
yeah, just on size and again what we know about the trends in the survey and how everything shakes out. It's not a brand I would expect to see near the top if
right.
I hadn't seen it near the top in every survey so far. It's the one that kind of stands out and defies the consistent trends otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we kind of see there. The one with modern, I think, is interesting because, like, is that and I get, like, we talk about things being more so positive or negative in terms of, connotations with the different companies. Is modern a good thing? Does that mean, hey, you're up to date? It's 2022, but you are a forward thinking, forward moving brand.
Yeah, this goes back to when Harry Arnett started with Callaway. That was one of his talking points, was the transformation of Callaway into the first modern golf company. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason why modern is on this list. Say like, well, it was important enough to be a talking point for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
who is modern now? I guess who is modern at this particular moment in time, because it is kind of, it's an ebb and flow, and in this case it's TaylorMade. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I think you can probably look at Stealth as kind of the new hot thing with the bright red, can't miss it carbon faces
Right.
as the instigator of that 26%.
Sure.
Number 2 on this list, just PXG, just kind of, I mean, I guess like arguably, if you think of what modern could mean in an all-encompassing sense, I mean, you can make a case that PXG should be running away from this.
Right.
And
Very
it all
easily
comes down
could.
to whether the business model is rapid discounting paired against high priced apparel, which includes a short sleeve winter coat, for example. Um, yeah, it's an interesting kind of business model, but it's one they're doing something that nobody else is doing. And so whether that's modern or that's different, I don't know, but it's man, it's a shakeup.
It's a
So
shakeup, and people, again, according to just the data, people are trusting it more. People are associating it more often with terms like, trust in engineering and whatever. It's not this overtly negative, it's going to be
it's
gone tomorrow, like there's,
it's just
I
not, yeah,
mean,
it's evolving past a crazy man screaming at you while you're trying to watch golf. Like,
right.
there's still a little bit of that. And I think, honestly, I
Sure.
think that's part of what makes it fun.
Sure.
But
Sure it is.
yeah, it's an evolving brand. And this is a case too. This is really the one when you look at a company that in that 2-year swing from when we last did this survey that completely changed, the 180, if you will. So PXG is definitely the one brand I would look at as the most different than it was 2 years ago. So, like I said, very interesting to see how perceptions are evolving as the company changes. And then the other one, like Cobra significantly declined here down to just under 12%. And they've typically
Mm-hmm.
been really, really strong in this one. Actually, I think finished first for 2 years in a row. 2 out of the last 3. So for them to fall to 4 again, this does seem to be a trend here with Cobra dipping a bit. And again, I'll just, as I go down the list, Titleist not hitting the board, not a company I would ever think of as excessively modern by
Right.
any standards. I mean, once upon a time I would have called them stale, and I don't know if I'd still apply that,
No.
but certainly not super progressive, not super kind of, I don't want to say they're not innovative, but again, not bold, not brash, not there's no neon sign in the Titleist
Right.
office,
Right.
but it's That's up 73%. So that's again looking at a big number coming out of two medium-sized numbers.
Next couple, Hype and Gimmick. I can see again evidence of overlap there, and I think the results maybe kind of track that to a certain degree. I mean, we kind of see a similar ranking of companies in terms of that, but I don't totally understand why.
Well, I think as I said, right, you kind of tap into the idea that regardless of how they try and position themselves, brands will inevitably be perceived as negative by a segment of consumers. It's true for any business. I think you sort of expect it, and oftentimes it is. Again, this is one where it is this portion of the negative words where you do see the market leaders hit the board with some pretty high numbers. So TaylorMade, number one in the hype department, 34% rounding up. PXG, 33%, which only up 2%, or so that's probably good. Right. Callaway, and then interesting, none of the above would be our fourth place finisher here.
Yeah,
so it's kind of what we would expect.
That's the one that jumped out to me was, again, apart from those kind of more obvious responses, the none of the above. Are we seeing a decline in the overall hypeness of the industry apart from a couple companies?
Yeah, looking at the results, I would, again, picking out trends in the data, none of the above is on the rise for these negative words. So that says, hey, fewer golfers are having negative experiences or associating negativity with the brand. So hey, maybe that's just score one for humanity as a whole. Maybe I don't know. I hope it. Right? It might be overly optimistic, but yeah, none of the above trending up, and then kind of the other notable here from my mind. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 down. So bottom half of the table, paying only 1.5%. So
yeah,
if I'm a brand, that's a win.
Yeah, especially if you're, I think it's one of those ones with hype, gimmick, marketing. Some of those, like, it can be seen as an absence, of that particular attribute, or kind of ambivalence. Like, I look at like Bridgestone. Well, it didn't really do a whole lot. They really didn't say. I mean, they pushed some of the ball stuff a little bit, but to me, hype's kind of like promise. Like, hey,
you got to have a budget to really hit the board here. You need, honestly, right? You've got to, if you're just quietly
tell
doing
people
your own
something
thing,
you're going to do, right? Like,
you
hype
sort of have hype it up, and as generally I would regard this as negative. Sort of, you have to hype up your product, and then have a large segment of people who don't necessarily believe the hype. So
right, exactly. But there has to be like a hype expectation, and if you don't set an expectation in some regard,
it takes a budget to annoy people.
Go similar with gimmick. Let's go to like kind of this marketing follower deceptive. What are you seeing in there?
Again, like these are the ones where, well, it's a little different because gimmick marketing, that's still in the part of the survey where big brands do well. Actually, gimmick, it was none of the above that actually got the highest percentage. So I thought, well, that's I guess that's good. And then you get into PXG, TaylorMade, Cobra, and then this is one where, again, telling, right? Big brands and Ping, Titleist, and again, not as big of a brand, Mizuno. Those are your bottom three. So that's basically saying, hey, no, there's no gimmick to these brands, which, again, if I'm looking from a brand perspective, that's one I would consider a win there. Sure. Marketing, again, right? It's a budget. It's almost like, hey, who has, it could be argued, maybe this is just a measure of spend, but this is TaylorMade, Callaway, PXG, Titleist. So it's, again, one of those things where I don't want to say it's a hole in the survey because we know, right? It's supposed to be that impulsive reaction, but it's, hey, these companies marketing, and whether or not that's effective, resonating marketing, less clear, but, certainly.
But are they? Yeah.
And then you look, because if you look at who's bottom of the list, it's Wilson. And so,
who?
Again, you need a budget. You have to have a budget to hit for these words. Now, when you get into follower is an interesting one. This to me is one of those ones where like there are certain ones of these. If my brand is on the top of the list, man, it would sting me a little bit, to be honest. And so here's one, Wilson.
Does any brand want to be seen? I mean, we understand that there are trends and things, and some are going to lead ahead.
Somebody has to be first. Everybody else has to follow.
Yeah. So like that's a reality of the ebbs and the flows in the industry and different products and this, whatever. But is there any case where you want to be, where you're like, yeah, all right, guys, we are the follower?
I look at this and go, this is a perception I need to change. And I go back to, I can't even remember now which driver versus driver it was. A full season of a show produced on Golf Channel, and what you get out of that is something that everybody looks at and goes, "That's a TaylorMade." And so, like that's the type of perception you need to shake. Is like, hey, putting a whole lot of effort into doing what not only has already been done before, but done a lot and well established by somebody else. So I think that may still be kind of dogging them a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to be seen as a follower. You want to be seen as a leader in some part of the industry. And I think with some of these, see, like if you're a leader in some area, again, you have, driver stuff, you got metalwoods, you have irons, you have balls, you have all these things. There's opportunities to be seen as a leader in some element, right? That would probably keep people, at least in my mind, like I took the survey because I wanted to go through and see what we asked and whatever. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, if they're a leader in some area, then they can't totally be a follower, And so it's like, man, almost by process of elimination, it's like, okay, do they lead anywhere? Do they do anything that kind of pushes ahead of others? And I think to a degree, we kind of see that here.
There's some interesting other bits here too, as well. Like, so Titleist actually crept up quite a bit. So they're up 110%. Again, relatively small numbers, but like that one's interesting because they've generally done what I would consider to be well throughout the survey. To see this kind of little blip as a follower, I mean, they're not too far off of where they were in 2018. So that could be, whether
as a total percentage, they're not.
Yeah. Whether that's cause for concern or a blip, we'll see next year. And then PXG up from just under 3.3% to almost 9%. So a 202% increase. And again, I think this is one where it's, I would almost chalk it up to growing awareness as prices have come down and the brand has become more accessible. Maybe people are taking a closer look. I don't know. It's like I said, anytime you see a big number here in that change column, it
begs further discussion.
Yeah,
at least a little bit.
It's worth thinking about. Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear what people think about PXG as a follower and why the massive jump.
Right, because they also ranked pretty high for leader.
I said
right. So, like, can you be both a leader and a follower?
I'd say one golfer's leader is another's follower. Yeah. That's
I mean, right. They weren't PhD wasn't. To clarify, they weren't very high on the table for leader, but their percentage change was significantly positive. Again, small numbers, but they were up. So PhD was up 70% in leadership and down 200% in or up 200% down, however you want to say it, in following. So yeah, what do we make of all that? Deceptive, inferior, dishonest. Ugh.
Yeah, so
these
deceptive,
are ugly words, Tony. Ugly
deceptive.
Words.
Yeah, I think so. Let's see. What are the next three? Deceptive, inferior, and dishonest. Deceptive and dishonest. There's some overlap there. Inferior. When I talk about the ones that would sting me, inferior is definitely one of those. But we'll start with deceptive. Congratulations to the entire industry. None of the above. Runaway winner. 47%.
Right. That's good.
So that's
good. That's what I mean.
And I think, as a whole, we talked about this. The industry has kind of toned it down. The claims aren't what they used to be. Nobody's been talking about 10 more yards for a long time now.
17 more yards.
Yeah, there's just not the claims aren't as audacious. Everything is kind of toned down, and I think this probably reflects that. PXG of the brands mentioned finished first, which isn't great. Again, awareness maybe, and then also it's like, man, the pricing structure, I could make a case for it, for that being the justification, because if I buy a driver for, I don't know, I can't even keep track of what they go for, $300 one week, and the next it's $119, and then 2 weeks later it's $249, and it's just it's just like a price board on the wall, and somebody's just throwing noodles, and wherever it sticks, that's this month's pricing. So I get that piece of it for sure. And then
and that's where we're currently at too with that. I mean, like, I was just looking around, and you get the daily deals and the sales and things, and current generation driver, I think for PXG right now today is $299. I think you can get it on sale.
Is that the Gen 5?
Yeah. I think, Gen 5, $299. You go to the site, boom. Right now you can buy it for $300, and I'm sure there's plenty of people that will do that. They might even do it right now. Go, I didn't, particularly. Is that a great price on the driver? Yeah. Do we have evidence that things are shifting and kind of changing with PXG? Yeah, people are trusting them more. They're like, it's such a bizarre confluence of data on PXG that it really is intriguing. They really are unlike any other company, because people trust them more, but they're following more. They trust them, but they have this, heritage of engineering, right? The two guys that they brought over originally were from Ping, the company that
stole a good one from Cobra too.
Stole a good one from Cobra, a couple from Ping, right? Company,
couple 2-3
that have ranked really, really high for engineering. So the history.
Let's be honest. They looted Ping at the beginning.
Oh, but so there's these things like the guts of that, and the design and the quality, and those pieces are absolutely intact and there. And then you see some of these pricing shifts. Now, you could argue that if you're on the right side of Deceptive, you might be okay with it. Like, I don't mind a driver that goes from 500 down to 299 if I get that 299. Now, does that mean that 500 was Deceptive? I don't know, but they're going to sell a shit ton of drivers at 299 because that's a ridiculously good deal on a very high quality product, right? So, yeah, it's just
it's such a. It's just to kind of put everything in context. So their 0211 driver, the new one, is selling for $199, not marked down for now. We'll see as we get closer to Christmas what happens. But say it was $199 driver, and I've been browsing the apparel section, because as much as I make fun of it, and I think some of it is a little out there. There's some.
A winter jacket stuff with short sleeves, for example.
Some of it just, does not make sense, and some of it is definitely not my style. But as I've mentioned before, I am currently in pursuit of the perfect pair of airplane pants, and I've come up empty so far on a couple tries. And there's a couple on the PXG website. I'm like, yeah, those look like they might be outstanding travel pants. $225. I'm like, how's pants more expensive than a driver?
I have, and I think I wore it on one episode, but a full-on khaki outfit, like a khaki jacket.
You absolutely embrace the ridiculousness. That's fine.
I did, but those pants, they are unbelievably comfortable.
Expensive.
They are, yes, they're both. They're both. They're both. I don't know, Tony. They're not inferior, I will tell you that, and they're not dishonest. They're really, really good and really, really expensive. So there you have it. Anyway, moving on. Inferior, dishonest.
Again, inferior. None of the above for both. So that's good. I love it. And like I said, inferior, that would be the one that stings. And so if somebody's got to get stung, of brand selected, Wilson, 26%, Tour Edge, 19%. And then it's a huge fall off. Cobra, PXG, Strix and Cleveland, 5, 4, and 3 and change across the board there. So it's really those.
I think, big takeaway.
And Wilson, it's and part of it is in the space they play. Wilson, I think, has become, whether by design or accident, if you look at kind of their, and again, if you accept that Metalwoods kind of pull perceptions by and large, Mizuno may be the exception there, but I think probably if you're driven by by metal woods, if that's where your perceptions come from. Wilson has inadvertently or maybe intentionally sort of entered into that slow swing speed class with a good bit of their products. So I think that's part of it. They don't test well because of that.
Right.
Again, the metal woods, I think the irons are perfectly fine. And then Tour Edge is an interesting one because they do. You look at the EXS stuff. That product line tests well.
It does.
Yeah, I
It
think
does.
before
And has
PXG
historically, right? Like that's
before
not new.
PXG went extra super duper uber insane with pricing, Tour Edge was in my mind the best value metal woods on the market. I wouldn't make that argument now. Again, look at PXG pricing; you can't really beat that.
Right.
But if you look at some of the stuff farther down the lineup, man, that hot launch stuff. I mean, just look at the pictures on the website. I mean, and they were pictures provided by Tour Edge. It just looks paint's sloppy.
It looks
low quality.
inferior.
It looks inferior. It looks like you would expect it to be in the Walmart discount rack.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you look at the EXF stuff, you don't see that. That is a decent looking, maybe even good looking product that performs well. And I get to hit a price point, by and large, if you're not going to eat the margin heavy,
right,
you got to cut some corners and make some sacrifices. But ooh, man, that one's just obvious to me. So there you go.
Yep. Big winners, though, to me on those ones that I think are really cool is the none of the above, right? Like if there's an industry trend that hopefully, and I'd like to think that our company, MyGolfSpy, I'd like to think that we played some role in some of this, perhaps. But seeing industry move away from practices that are innately deceptive and disguised as truth, but it's really just fundamentally dishonest. Hopefully, as an industry, we're getting better at that, and companies are becoming more aware of that, and ultimately, that's a good thing for consumers, right?
Yeah, you look at Dishonest, none of the above, runaway winner, 66%, PXG, the only actual brand above 10%. And then you have 7 of the 12 brands that we allow you to choose from below 1%.
Yeah,
So
that's great. That's
yeah.
a win for the industry. Even if some are uninspired, arrogant, or humble, which are our next several categories here, right?
Yeah. So, and I think arrogant and humble were, and I guess we had them. They were probably the last ones added to the original survey, which is why we have at the bottom here.
Sure.
Uninspired is another one that would sting me a little bit. And again, we keep coming back to Wilson on this one. Mm-hmm. And man, Harry probably hates us right now, but hopefully he sees this as an opportunity. Like, hey, there's a tremendous opportunity to change perceptions and reinvigorate a brand somehow, because it's just something is lacking, at least with our readers. It's not resonating as, these are not attractive qualities. These are not associations that make you want to run out and buy a product. So
no, to me, uninspired is like, did you even try? Like, did you, I taught middle school, right? And through high school and college for the better part of 2 decades. And, you'd get assignments kids would turn in and stuff. It's like,
I'm going to do as little as possible to ensure I get a C.
Like
man, I just got to get a C.
Here. If you made an effort, like try, do something. It's like that stick thing, like move, do something. And this is like one of those ones like, yeah, it's just like, meh,
Yeah. So. And so again, none of the above second, Tour Edge.
Yep.
Third.
Yep.
I'll mention Bridgestone fourth here, but this is a general trend and it's Bridgestone, and I think driven primarily by the fact that now we've gone several years without a new club from Bridgestone to the point where we're wondering, are they done in making golf
clubs? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like you don't know, is that the end of the line for a Bridgestone club line? And so I think it's sort of like, hey, that's where Bridgestone is coming from here. So that's one brand. When I look, I see in some cases big number drops, but I don't read anything into it because again, I think it's probably driven by just lack of product in the categories that our readers care most about.
Yep.
And this is good too. Like you look, this almost telling perhaps, but dead last on this list, the company that golfers least associate with uninspired is TaylorMade. Yeah. And so maybe that says, hey, even if you don't believe in the carbon fiber and you don't like kind of all this attention getting stuff, to your point about Wilson, certainly gives the appearance that they're trying. They are making an effort to do something, create something that looks a certain way, draws golfers in, is enticing, feels like something that you would want in your bag, that kind of thing. So
totally agree. Arrogant, humble, premium, cheap. These are kind of, the opposites of the world.
So the top 5 for arrogant: PXG, Titleist, TaylorMade, none of the above, and Callaway. And while I would probably move Callaway up a few places, beyond that, there's nothing to nitpick here. I mean, like you just know where PXG. It's like, I mean, PXG. I mean, if you want to look for a bright spot, is PXG actually dipped 15%. So dipping here is good. Ping actually 58% towards the negatives. Cobra 67% towards the negative, but again, small numbers in some cases, below 1%.
There's not enough, gross number change there for me to get too excited one way or the other about that. But kind of same with the humble stuff. I think the premium and cheap is a very interesting dichotomy because, again, I don't know that any brand wants to be seen as cheap. I think regardless of price point, you want to be seen as a premium. I mean, right. And again, there are certain lines, like I said, with Tour Edge, it's hot launch line. They know isn't going to necessarily be seen as premium, but still, regardless of the price point, you want people to feel like there's value there. And I think some of this is a value statement from people that even at certain price points, people, if they feel like they're getting a lot of value for the price, they're not going to rank it really low for premium.
Yeah, it's one of the, well, we'll start with premium, then we'll talk about cheap. Yeah, so premium is interesting because we know as guys who read the press releases, as guys who are in the room, who sit through the presentations, we've talked about this before. Like, premium is a word we hear a lot. And
Uber
it's
premium,
not even
super premium, double premium,
it's
triple premium.
So important that it's not even, you're right, it can't exist on its own, right? It needs to have that qualification of extra premium, ultra premium, uber premium, whatever it is. And so this is one where, like, who because everybody is using it to an extent. Everybody wants to be seen as premium. Who is making the noise that resonates, I guess. And so I was a little surprised to see Titleist hit again 44.7%, massive number. Considering Mizuno was second on the list at just above 16, so massive gap there. Odd. I mean, on one hand, I say, hey, PXG third overall, but they were first when we did this survey 2 years ago, in 2020, the first time we included premium on the list. So they dipped 53%, 54. I think you probably chalk that up to the change in the pricing model. So that's probably all of it. And then the other one I just have to point out is Callaway, because I would argue that no company in golf leans heavier on premium in everything they do than Callaway. And in terms of how it's resonating, 5% picked Callaway. So that's, on a list of 12 brands, that's a very solid 6.
Solidly in the middle.
Yeah. I don't know that that's hitting, that's resonating as well as they hope it is. And again, it's one of those things. Like I said, I think it's by and large a meaningless word, but everybody leans on it because we all want to get something premium for our money. And we're starting to see that a little bit of the pushback in, I would use Ball Lab as the example because we have a quality rating scale, where
we have a way to quantify some of the premium,
as we talked about things,
right?
most things fall in the average price rate or average,
because that's how
range.
Averages work, Tony.
Right.
Despite the most things are average in this world.
Even whatever you want to put the score on it, right? You have many products that are average, and what we're seeing in the comments, what people find, what our readers find aggravating, is an average quality, average performing, whatever it happens to be, average quality product that commands a premium price point. So when you're selling
this differential, right,
a mediocre performing product for a premium price point, that's where people get aggravated. So I don't know. I just I don't see it. I don't know for the most part that
if we were to dig deeper And like I said, this is a large umbrella type survey, right? This is one where if we did dig deeper into creating differentials, like what creates premium, like I said, you have performance, you have price, you have value, right? And oftentimes, how people feel about a company is that differential between price and performance, right? And if I'm going to pay a certain amount for something and I feel like I get that amount or more, then that premium fee, I mean, this is Mizuno irons, where people say, hey, I am getting in general this, and I'm paying.
Right. You don't want to pay an above average price to get an average product. And
Yeah.
so if you're
And
going
with
to come out there
Mizuno
and say
irons,
I'm premium and I'm going to command a premium price point, you
that's
realistically
Titleist
need to
golf
back that
balls.
up.
That's Titleist golf balls. It's this, we see the performance of it and say, okay, it's worth what you're paying for it. And maybe you might even argue it's worth more than what you're paying for it. And we could dig into that. But yeah, and cheap's kind of the converse of that, right? Where you go, okay, yeah, I'm not getting what I'm paying for. And it's just seen, I mean, inferior, cheap. Again, you probably don't want to be seen as those, because inexpensive to me is different than cheap.
Yeah, and this is sort of, it's kind of a gray area in the survey, and I did it on purpose at the time, and we've tried to be consistent in using the same words. And
Yep.
so cheap is, to an extent, it's the opposite of premium, but it could also be almost seen as the opposite of inexpensive, or
Right.
sort of the dirty, nasty, gross form of
The ugly
inexpensive.
side of inexpensive.
So, whether it's price or perception of quality, this is a
Yeah.
tie into quality that's driving this. So, Tour Edge, 35%. Hey, maybe that is some of the value price products. Maybe some of that speaks to some of the quality of those value price products.
Sure.
Wilson, again, not hitting a board where it wants to be, but again,
Nope.
price wise, if we want to look at this in terms of value, their metalwoods tend to be below market averages.
Mm-hmm.
Irons still below market averages and are strong performers. Putters
Yep.
well below market average, strong performers. And the new 3-piece golf ball was
Strong performer.
yeah, that hit a quality award, hitting, I think the score off the top of my head, don't hold me to this, people, but I want to say it was 87 in a world where most everything else is 75. So that's, some bright side there to say, hey, there is, maybe some stuff is cheap, but also some is inexpensive and provides value.
Yep.
PXG, this one is crazy. Again, small numbers.
Small numbers, people. Don't
Finished
freak out.
fourth. 3.5% of respondents chose PXG. That is a
Whopping.
935% change. So they went from 0.34 to 3.52. 935%, the biggest flip ever in a survey. But again,
Yep.
small numbers and a total 180 in the business model here.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
make of that what you will, but it's just, when
Make
you're
of that what
scrolling
you
down,
will.
you're like, hey, is that calculation wrong, to the point where,
Yep.
like, I got my Excel formulas, and then I'm like, let's just use Google
I
for
miss
this
a
one to double
decimal
check.
here.
Yeah,
What
nope, still
happened?
935. That is massive. So
Yeah, it is.
and then again, telling on the bottom end of the table, TaylorMade, Callaway, Ping, Mizuno, and Titleist, all of which claim premium positions, command premium price points. Mizuno maybe a tick less so than the others, but all of those
Yeah.
brands below 1%. So
Yep.
I would again, a case where I would take that as a win.
All right. So with that, Tony, any final thoughts on survey stuff? Any big picture main takeaways?
I mean, Titleist trending up, I think, is an interesting one. Cobra trending down a little bit was surprising to me, and then PXG just sort of registering all over the place, positive and negative. Just, I think, probably
Yeah.
speaks to a growing awareness of the brand more than anything else. So those are kind of the three that caught my attention along the way. And then, you would expect Callaway and TaylorMade to be near the top for the good things, and near the top for some elements that people find aggravating as well. So
Yeah. I would agree.
yeah.
That's my big takeaway too. Last question, Tony. What do you want for the holiday season here? What can I send you? I'm going to send you a Christmas present, Tony. What's one thing I should send you, and what's one thing I shouldn't?
I saw like Alex Etchus posted something on Facebook yesterday. It was like however many days it is till Christmas. He's like until you get a new toilet putter thing.
Yeah,
you know,
that's easy go to the squat and putt or something. Or
yeah,
it's called the potty.
You know, it's such a
putter.
thing. Like people who don't know anything about golf or anything you're involved in. So back when I lived in Boston, before I had big imposing Dobermans, I had tiny little Chihuahuas because that's what we could fit in the apartment, and we used to get all kinds of Chihuahua themed gifts, and I'm like. Oh, I just have dogs. I'm not part of some weird subculture here. Like that's we don't need this.
Lovers.
Yeah. So interesting enough, there's none of that like with the Dobermans really. I guess it's like, oh, you must just have dogs, whereas like with the little dogs, like some
people assume,
stuff.
if you're a little dog lover, you're
into something.
Like you got a Chihuahua themed room. You got this. Here's a tip for people that are out there. If you're trying to get somebody something for golf stuff and they're like way into golf like that, where you're trying to show that like, hey, I appreciate that. I want to get you something you like. Don't
do it.
No, here's the ultimate gift, Tony, for any golf person. Here's the ultimate gift. Never fails. You know what it is? Cash. Just give them money.
Cash money.
Cash money.
Cash money.
Gift card. Something, because anything you try to get them, you're going to screw it up. You're going to try to do it right. You're going to get them a dozen Pro V1s, and they got fit into Pro V1X.
Maybe they like.
You're going to get them a golf glove, and it's going to be the wrong size. You're going to get them a golf shirt, and they're like, "Oh, I don't wear Peter Millar. I only wear Johnny O," or something like that, right?
You know, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I sound like an ungrateful bastard, and that's might be fair. I may be an ungrateful bastard, but I can't remember the last time somebody actually got me something I wanted for Christmas. Like, everybody's got their own idea. I tried last year. I tried to drop a hint. I was like I actually sent my wife a spreadsheet because we knew we were moving into this new house.
Nobody would send their wife a spreadsheet.
New house. Well, we're moving into this new house, and Flora's got a list of projects for me or whatever, and I'm like, here's a list of tools we might need. That's just give me some tools. That would be great.
With links like to that, like Amazon links.
Oh yeah, no, everything. Like the only way I could have made it more obvious was to actually print it out and just circle it in red and write, buy one of these for me for Christmas. None of it. So I almost pulled the trigger. Like Rockler had a sweet deal on a planer and a stand, and I almost pulled the trigger, but I didn't. So it'll go on sale again, maybe.
Well, we'll see.
That's the secret to the holidays. If you want a good gift for Christmas, for the holidays, whatever it is you celebrate, buy it for yourself.
And there you go. Words to live by. He's Tony Covey, Chris Nickel, GolfSpy T, GolfSpy C. Follow us, find us, hit us up with some messages, thoughts, dreams, hopes, whatever you got. Until next time, Tony, we're out.